Okay, we left off. Caitlin is reading the letter that her mom wrote to Father Dobbin. He is the president of Villanova. Tears were streaming down my face as I read my mom's last-ditch effort. Send it, I said. Let's bless it first, she said. She placed it in the stamped envelope and held one end as I took the other. We both closed our eyes and said a silent prayer. I leaned down and kissed it, for good luck. In July, we had our bake sale. We raised $350. I was working full-time at the pizza parlor and picking up any babysitting jobs I could, and had only saved another $900. I had another $28,750 to go. Then I got an email from Martin saying he was waiting patiently, but I could tell that even Martin's optimism was wavering. How am I going to tell him that it might not happen? I asked my mom, once again fighting back tears. She stayed quiet as she considered my question. Usually she'd snap right back and chastise me for a bad attitude. She'd say, "Don't give up. That's not going to solve this problem. Save all your energy for figuring out how we can do it, not how we can't." Today was different. We'd better start thinking about how to break it to him, she said, a voice barely a whisper. All right, now it's Martin, July 2003. I was surprised that Caitlin and Anne hadn't responded to my email right away. I assumed they were very busy. I was too. It was peak tourism season, and the bed and breakfast was booked solid every single day. It was hard to take time off, but I had to go fill out a few more forms at the embassy, so I'd be ready to go when we found the scholarship money. Rebecca was helping me figure out a visa without a benefactor. It was very difficult. There was an internet cafe not far from Aloise and Secchi's house. I checked in my first morning there on my way to the U.S. Embassy to see if there was any news. There was an email from Villanova dated July 15, 2003. I was trembling as I clicked it open. July 2003, now we're on Caitlin. I woke up startled. My mom was screaming so loud I thought something terrible had just happened. It was a rare day off, and I had been out with Damon until 1 a.m. playing pool. After our big fight that spring, Damon really backed off and gave me space. I appreciated it. But he was really happy when school was over, and I had more time for him. I was happy too. I heard another shriek and looked at my clock. It was 9:15 a.m. I stumbled downstairs to make sure everything was okay. That's when I heard her say, "That's fantastic news!" I had to tap her on the shoulder to let her know I was there, waiting to hear what on earth was so exciting on a Thursday morning. "Caitlin, they did it!" she cried. She then told me the story at breakneck speed. Father Dobbin marched my letter down to Candace, placed it on her desk, and said, "Martin Gonda." Candace said, "Yes, Father Dobbin, he's an extraordinary young man, but we don't have the money for a full scholarship." And then Father Dobbin tapped his fingers on her desk and said, "Find the money." That was in June. And this is Candace on the phone right now saying they found the money. Martin is going to Villanova. The rush of emotions was so intense I thought it might swallow me whole. July 2003, Martin. The first line of the email was like rocket fuel. "We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship beginning with the 2003-2004 academic year." It propelled me from my seat. The breath I'd been holding for the past few months came barreling out of me as I shouted, "Yes!" The cafe was already filled with people. Several turned to look at me like I was crazy. I did not care. "I'm going to America!" I shouted. "America!" I managed to sit back down to read the rest of the message. It said a package was sent to Rebecca Mono on my behalf with all my paperwork necessary to secure my visa. I was so excited that I ran out without paying for the computer use. When I saw the shop owner come after me, I grabbed money from my pocket and shoved it into his hand and then started sprinting. The bus to the embassy took forever that day. There were plenty of seats, but I was too excited to keep still. I paced up and down the aisle, my heart pounding, my mind racing. As soon as I saw the white gleaming building in the distance, I pulled the cord to stop the bus and then ran down the street and through the wrought iron gates. "Congratulations, Martin," Rebecca said as I burst through her door. She handed me a FedEx package that was as heavy as a textbook. I pulled the cardboard strip and the contents fell onto my lap. Villanova University was written in navy blue across a thick cream-colored cardboard folder. I opened it and saw a version of the email I had just received. This was the official acceptance letter. This was real. I looked up at Rebecca, who was beaming. "A lot of people believe in you, Martin," she said, "including me." I thought of every single person who would help me get to this very place, sitting in the American Embassy across from a blonde-haired and blue-eyed woman who spoke fluent Shona. The list was long, but it started with Caitlin. I had to share the news. "Shall we call them?" Rebecca asked. "Can we?" I said. She picked up the phone and started to dial. July 2003. Caitlin. The news was still sinking in 2 hours later when the phone rang. I picked it up and said hello, but there was a funny echo, like the person on the other end was calling from the moon. "Caitlin?" I heard a few seconds later. "It's Martin." I started to shake. "You got the scholarship!" I shouted. My mother came running, so I put him on speakerphone and kept shouting, not because I thought he couldn't hear me, but because I was too excited to speak otherwise. "You need to be here by August 24th, my mom was now shouting too. "I just spoke to Candace. We know everything." "Mom," Martin said, "is that you?" "Yes, it's me," my mom said. "We are finally going to meet you." "My brother from another mother," I chimed in. That's what we had started calling Martin in my household. "I look forward to that day," Martin said. "Where are you?" I asked. Here in your embassy with Rebecca," he said. "Well, tell her that I will arrange for the airline tickets immediately," Mom said. "In fact, may I speak with her?" My mom got on her notepad and started making a list of things we needed to do as Martin's sponsors once he was here in the United States. "You did it, Mom," I said after we hung up. "Honey, none of this would have happened without you," she said. "Don't ever forget that." We called my dad and Richie to tell them the good news. Wallace was in Colorado working for a friend his parents had met in Victoria Falls. I called Damon last. "This is amazing news, Caitlin," he said. "I'm so proud of you." "You're finally going to meet him," I said. "It will be like meeting a celebrity at this point," Damon said. "I can't wait." "I can't either," I said. The very same day my mom booked a one-way ticket for Martin. He would leave Zimbabwe on August 15th and arrive in Philadelphia the next day. After waiting nearly 6 years for this moment, a month felt like forever. Okay, hold on one second. Okay. All right, August 2003. This is Martin. I didn't have much time to get ready, so I returned to Victoria Falls to tell Tekla and Fanuel the great news and get all my vaccinations. From there, I went to Mutare to say goodbye to my family. I wanted to tell them about the scholarship in person. I also had to say goodbye. I had a feeling it would be a long time before I saw them again. I waited until my father and Nation came home that evening. We were all sitting around the fire, eating together. George was now 7, no longer a baby, but a grown boy. Lois was 12, the same age as Caitlin was when she started writing me. She had maintained the number 1 position in her class since grade 1, without once slipping. Anne still sent my mother to keep everyone in school, which meant Lois, too, would go to college if she wanted to. I was thinking of her when I stood up to make the announcement. "Ma, Baba, I have news," I started. "I will be leaving in a few weeks to study in America." I saw a smile grow across my mother's face, but it quickly turned to a frown when my father leaped from his seat and started to run round, shouting, "Martin is going to the United States! He did it!" My mother started hissing, "Keep quiet. This is no time to brag." Some things would never change. My father was so happy for me at this news, but my mother was suspicious. "You don't brag about things ever," she scolded my father when he finally calmed down. "We cannot jinx this." Then she turned to me and said quietly and composed, "We're very happy for you, Martin. You've made your poor parents so proud." Her eyes shone in the firelight, happy tears. I was scheduled to take the train back the very next day. Before I left, I took my mother aside. Anne had sent $100 to the Victoria Falls Western Union with a note that said, "For travel expenses." I priced the least expensive round-trip train ticket to Mutare, and kept a small amount of money for food during the 2-day journey, and gave the rest to my mother. "This is for you, Mother. From my American mother, I said, placing $96 in her hands. You keep this, son, she said. No, Ma, I said, wrapping her hand around the cash. Once I get to America, I will send more, but until I get there, I need to know you're going to be okay. My mother looked me in the eyes and said, Martin, we are fine, because of you. Now go. I hugged her, and then my father placed both his hands on my shoulders and said, I am so proud of you, son. So, so proud. I said goodbye to Nation and Simba, both grown men by then. It was hardest to say goodbye to Lois this time. I will miss you, brother, Lois said as she hugged me goodbye. Keep your grades up, and you will soon come after me, I said. I returned to Vic Falls the first week in August to wait for the plane tickets to arrive. Each day felt like an eternity. By August 11th, the tickets still had not arrived. I knew Caitlin and her mom had sent them, but that didn't help. The waiting kept me awake at night and fed the wildest dreams whenever I did drift off. In one, I was lying on a dirt floor in a hut similar to the one I shared with Frank and Chigadora. It was pouring rain. The water sounded like pounding hooves on a thatched roof, which I was convinced would collapse at any moment. Suddenly, water started seeping in from the sides and rising up from the floor. When it reached my face, I startled awake, drenched with sweat. I looked around and was relieved that I was not in Chigadora or even Chisamba Singles, but still in the guest room at Wallace's house. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the lost ticket was a sign that this was not meant to be. That morning at breakfast, Tekla informed me a prophet was coming to see me. In Zimbabwe, prophets are like witch doctors. They can foretell the future. My mother made my father see one years ago, before I was born, when he was misbehaving. That meeting, she claimed, cured him of his womanizing. I didn't entirely believe in their powers, but they are hugely popular in my country. People turn to witch doctors more often than regular doctors, and many friends and family members claim that it worked. I was so desperate at this point, I was willing to put aside my skepticism and try anything. The prophet arrived dressed in a robe. His silver hair was clumped into dreadlocks, steel wool snakes slithering down his back. We sat in the living room, and I told him my troubles. He grabbed my hands and started to chant with his eyes closed. When he started speaking gibberish, I was so terrified that I closed my eyes as well. His entire body started shaking violently as he kept chanting. I cracked one open in my eyes and saw that his were open too, but rolling in the back of his head. He started moaning and sounded like an animal. The shaking grew more intense until finally he let go of my hands with such ferocity I fell backwards. When I regained my composure, the prophet was sitting quietly with his hands folded in his lap. Your aunt doesn't want you to go, he said. She has a bone to chew with your mother, so she's placed a hex on you. I had never met my aunt, but I know she stayed behind in the rural area and was worse off than my mother was. I thought of the topless women I saw in Chigadora, and of Enough, the young girl who walked 7 kilometers to get to school. I thought of all the people in Zimbabwe who were struggling, who deserved the chance I was being given. What can I do? I asked. Let us pray, the prophet said. I grabbed his hands and closed my eyes, and I made a litany of silent promises. If those tickets came, if I was allowed on that plane, if I could actually make it to the United States to study, I'd never forget those who couldn't go with me. I would always remember Enough and my mother. When I opened my eyes, I saw the prophet staring at me. That's all you can do, he said. Afterwards, I was so exhausted that I went upstairs and fell asleep. In the middle of the day, but I was so tired that I slept straight through dinner and until the following morning. It was a sound, restful sleep, the first time in a very long time. Okay, I'm going to end it here, and then I think we are getting extremely close to the end, so I'll be back.